So like any dynamic language, interpreted language, Julia has a command line. In Julia, the command line is usually called the REPL, and it stands for Read, Evaluate, Print Loop.
So REPL, it's the basic process in Julia. Every time you take a step, such as in Julia box, we hit Shift Enter, then you run through this loop. Okay, try it. Open a new notebook in Julia box. That is, in the browser where you have Julia box open, you click on New, and make sure that the cell is in code mode, and then you type exactly this, and you press Shift Enter, and what comes up is Hello World. This is the first program in any language, traditionally. It's a one-liner. Let's see how it works. It's got two parts, the println part and the Hello World part. So the println part, notice that I write it as println, open and close parentheses. Println is the name of the function, and the parentheses are there to indicate that you are dealing with a function. You need to watch very carefully the different delimiters in Julia. Here it's parentheses. Julia also uses brackets, and it also uses braces. If you hadn't noticed, please now pay attention to the use of quotation marks here. I've got parentheses, open and close parentheses inside quotation mark. The delimiter itself is just open and close parentheses. Here I'm using the quotation marks to indicate that whatever is inside the quotation marks are just signs. I'm not talking about what they mean, I'm just talking about what the signs are. That's how we will be using quotation marks in this course. Let's move on to the Hello World part. Whatever is inside these parentheses, okay, which is this inside the parentheses, is called the argument of the function. So now the argument includes quotation marks. That means that the function println is receiving something where whatever is inside the quotation marks are to be treated without caring about what they mean. Println is simply going to echo whatever is there onto the screen. So println is a little bit like a telephone. It doesn't actually care what the human beings are actually saying. Strings in Julia are immutable. You cannot actually change a string. You can only use part of it, or you can use strings to do other things. The simplest, of course, is to combine the strings to make a longer string. Okay, so let's look at a few more REPL examples. Here, all I'm actually entering is 5. This part is not, from the point of view of the REPL, it's just ignored. Anything in Julia following a hashtag is completely ignored. As somebody who really doesn't like Facebook, this is one of the favorite aspects of Julia for me. So the code 5 is just echoed, 5 on the screen. The value 5 is created, it's echoed. If we make 5 plus 5, what happens is that it's entered, it's evaluated, and then the result is echoed. So we can actually get println to behave intelligently when it comes to numbers. That is, here, 5 minus 3.8 is not inside quotation marks, but println is intelligent enough to realize that this creates a number that we want to see displayed. This line here, 5 plus 15 minus 3.2, that's a number, and then we have a comma, and then we have a string created by opening the quotation mark, a space, dot, 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 space, evaluated, exclamation mark, closing the quotation marks. And that is displayed there. Moving on, we can combine strings using multiplication. So this operator, when we put it between numbers, causes multiplication. When we put it between strings, it just causes a longer string. The space here between the exclamation mark and the M is actually inside this string. This space is not automatically created. It's between hello and my word because there's a space before my. So if we want to do repeated combination, it's like repeated multiplication, which is of course raising to a power, and we see my word 3 times. Please note the following. The read, evaluate, print loop is a feature of dynamical languages in general, not only Julia, but also Python and MATLAB and many others. As I said, REPL stands for read, evaluate, print loop, which is a feature of dynamical languages, including Julia, Python, and MATLAB. Loop means that it's standing there and it's looping all the time. When you've got a dynamic language, it's actually waiting for your input all the time. It will read the input, it'll evaluate what it reads, and it'll print a result, and then it'll stand ready to receive more input. Strings are really, really important in computing, and one must be really careful exactly what is a string and what is not a string. Anything inside double quotes is a string in Julia. If you type stuff out, put it in double quotes, you make a string. So what are the things that you can actually include in a string? It's almost all the characters in your keyboard. Here's a slightly longer example, a string of odd characters. If we execute that, it's just exactly those characters between the quotation marks. The output is displayed between quotation marks to emphasize that it is a string. That's not exactly the same. If we see println of this string, we would see only the string and not the quotation marks. So what is the things that you can't enter from your keyboard? Well, the escape characters like backslash and $. They are the 2 most important escape characters, and if you try to do that, oh, a bug! That's the very first bug that we've seen in this course, and I want to emphasize that bugs are really, really important. Some would say that the main difference between an expert and a beginner programmer is that the expert is very good at dealing with bugs. If you try to create a string by opening double quote, typing $, closing double quote, you will also hit a problem. If you tried backslash $, println, open quote, backslash $, close quotes, you don't get error messages, but it doesn't mean that it exactly does what you want it to do. You have to really learn how to read the bug reports, and you have to learn to love them because they will be how you will make your programs do exactly what you want them to do. But sadly, error messages aren't always that helpful. In this case, it says that there's a load error, the syntax, there's an incomplete string syntax. So you are being told that something is incomplete here. You need to realize that what you've done is you've opened a string, then you've given an escape character for the double quote. The escape character influences the double quote. Actually, what you've entered here is 1 character for the double quote and then another message which is backslash double quote. So you need to put a 3rd double quote to close the string. If you're in an interactive notebook, let's say like the Julia box, and you've typed, then you see that the color of this little closing parenthesis is different from the opening parenthesis, which indicates that the argument is not a string. You're not allowed to close it because the argument is not a string. It's not because it's println, it's just that Julia realizes that you haven't done it. So if I put another quote mark, now there's a string. Inside the string is backslash quote mark space, and that is what println is supposed to print for us. Let's see. Exactly 1 quotation mark. Backslash quotation mark creates just a double quote.
So that's the end of week 1, lecture 3, the read, evaluate, print loop.